Hello, and welcome to the David Eames On Your Mind podcast. I'm joined, as always, with the fabulous Mikey Markham. Owen Oxley, I think he's gone on a cruise or something, or maybe he's working again. Anyway, today I want to talk about sleep. Sounds a bit mundane, a bit everyday, but actually, good sleep is the single biggest factor in a sense of well-being that maybe we have some control over. Mikey, do you sleep well?
No.
Okay.
Not really. I'm in a bed at the minute with an 8-week-old most of the time because she is sleeping on her mum, being breastfed, and a 2.5-year-old that kicks the hell out of me. So that's not great. Then I choose to sleep downstairs most of the time when I've just finished editing or get work done, and I've got my dog just at the top of my head sleeping there, and halfway through the night he'll jump on me and just decide it's playtime.
Right.
That's not helpful. So maybe I just need my own space, which would be a great start. But I think I've always had tinnitus in my ears. So I've learnt with the TV on from being a kid. I've always had in the room. And obviously that's a source of entertainment and probably not very good for you. But that's kind of how I've just lived. So it's in my mind always got to be with TV on, because when I go in the dark, I just feel irritable. I can't sleep. It doesn't feel right or make sense to me, and I drift off with a film on.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I need to quiet my mind more, but it will just go into quick mode, thinking, no, you sleep with the TV on, mate. You put a film on and drift off.
Right.
It's not because I'm scared of the dark anymore. Maybe as a kid I was, but I've had it on where I went to a festival recently, and it's just pitch dark in your tent. I'm just lying there going, I really want to sleep now, and it's just more irritable than anything. So to answer your question, mate, not great sleeper.
Okay.
And it definitely feeds into my days and takes away a lot of that energy.
Right. So maybe some of the things we talk about today may help a little bit.
I hope so, yeah.
I have tinnitus as well. Had it for a while, but it didn't. It came on later in life, probably through industrial injury. I remember the doctors advising me the key was to not listen to it. And I found that being married for more than 40 years gave me good practice with that. I'm only joking.
Don't listen to it. You're an awful man, David.
I can be. Anything for a gag, you know that.
But did you manage to sort of help with not listening to it? Was that good advice?
Yeah, because it's there now. It's always there.
Yeah, same.
But if you don't listen to it, you don't hear it.
Yeah. What about, though, when everything's quiet? Because mostly you've got the external world and it's so loud.
Just ignore it.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair.
It sounds ridiculous, but it's kind of the only way. There's no way of switching it off. So
not just mental health podcast here. We talk about all things.
Yeah. So sleep. Now, for me, managing sleep is really important. So different people need different amounts of sleep, and at different stages in your life, you need different amounts of sleep. So, for instance, teenagers, their body clock shifts. They need to actually lie in later in the morning and go to bed later. And when school are making kids go to school even earlier, it actually is detrimental to their learning processes. That the teenage brain needs to be a different chronotype. That's a good word, a chronotype. That's whether you're a lark or an owl. I'm most definitely an owl. It's 7 o'clock in a day is enough for anybody. You don't need to have two.
You say it's a chronotype?
Chronotype, yeah.
And how many types are there?
Basically two, if you like. There's a bit of spectrum between them. I mean, some people are more extreme than others, and it's down to that. Larks, they always feel that they're really virtuous because they get up early and go to bed early. Well, I say, the old idea of the early bird gets the worms just goes to show the worm should have stayed in bed, because that was a bad strategy getting up early.
Yeah, that's a good saying. I like that.
So it's important, first of all, to know what your chronotype is and then see if you can work around that. And secondly, to figure out how much sleep you need. Now, at this stage in my life, I need between 6 and 7 hours a night. So I kind of plan for that. If I'm getting more than 7 hours, I might struggle to sleep the next day, and I might and I might just feel a bit more dopey. It's really odd. I'll lose some of the sharpness. Whereas if I have less than 6 hours, I'm definitely going to need more sleep. So I will plan to have a nap later in the day whenever I can. And that napping is another important thing.
Nap.
A 20-minute nap is so refreshing.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing is, when we're short on sleep, it affects almost every aspect of us. It affects our mood. It affects our mental alertness. It also has physiological effects. So inflammation tends to be more pronounced when you're short of sleep. Everything needs sleep. Sleep is essential to life. Every species on Earth sleeps. Even bacteria show a degree of diurnal cycle that they change each day. And if we don't get enough sleep, we will die.
Do you know some of the effects that it has on the biology, scientifically speaking?
Well, I say it's that it affects your healing processes. It affects the amount of inflammation that you've got.
What do you know? Why though? Do you know what it does in terms of regenerating?
Well, it isn't really known. This is the whole thing. We don't. There are various theories about what sleep does. For instance, there are theories that at night in the brain is clearing out toxins that build up. Another theory is that it's organising the memories from the day. And part of the dreaming process is that, but we really don't know. But if you think about it, that sleep, from an evolutionary point of view, seems like a daft idea. If you're living on the savannas of Africa and there are dangerous animals around, going almost unconscious for a period of the day doesn't seem to be a good strategy. If you could be up all the time, working and fighting, then that's going to be really an advantage. So there's got to be a very powerful reason for sleep being there. So like whales and dolphins, they go to sleep with half of their brain at a time.
Yeah, and ducks as well, don't they?
Yes. So everything sleeps, and we really need to pay some respect to it. So first of all, is try and organise the time that you're sleeping. So, for instance, we used to often holiday in the northwest coast of Scotland. So an 8 to 9 hour drive. You'd want to be setting off at about 5 o'clock in the morning. Ordinarily, I get up between 8 and 9 in the morning, take the dog out. So a week before I was going to go on holiday to Scotland, I would start going to bed half an hour or an hour earlier each day and getting up half an hour or an hour earlier each day. So by the time it got to the day of travel, it wasn't a big shock and I wasn't going to fall asleep at the wheel. You know, so actively managing your sleep patterns.
That's interesting. Yeah, I really like the thought of knowing your sleep type as well, because I remember when I was about 17, 18 was probably the time I was most depressed. I've had lots of periods of depression, but that was a real time I can look back to and remember how painful it was. And I like your term masturbation on should do's, but I was following loads of personal trainers at the time and people that were motivational speakers, and it's like, get the fuck up, 4:30 in the morning, get up, do this. And I was living in that way. So then I'd go for a run at 4:30 in the morning, I'd get supplements down me, I'd just be living, and then by 7 in the morning when it's time to start work and start the day, I was just beaten and done for. And it was a routine for probably half a year at least, maybe a bit longer. Maybe I did a year of that. And I was in the boxing scene and everything. And it was just so rigid and structured. And I was exhausted. And I just remember sort of waking up one day thinking, I wished I wasn't here anymore. Like, this is what being human is. And it was horrible. Exhausting.
Too much work.
Yeah, so, you know, I love a sleep-in now. And I probably still get up at about 7, half 7. That's quite late for some people now, isn't it? But if I have a perfect night's sleep, it will be from 11 to 7, and I have the best day. It's more at the 90% to 100% feeling, and I'm not getting crashes by 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, that midday crash. And this is off of sleep, but another thing, I do fasting. And that does help for me, because if I've had really good sleep and then I'm not going to eat till a bit later on. My body seems to look forward to it.
Uh-huh.
But I think another thing of what you're saying, it's about just listening to your body and knowing what your sleep type is, knowing what even your eating patterns might be, and just kind of seeing your body as a bit of a science experiment in that.
Yeah, it's control what you can control.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's if you know how much sleep you need, then plan for it. If you're taking the view that sleep is the single biggest factor in a sense of well-being that you have some control over, well, it makes sense to take some control over it. So for me, my pattern is 2 a.m. to about 8:30 a.m. So that works about right for me.
2 a.m.
Yeah.
Do you get quite a bit done in the early hours? 'Cause
Well, yeah, quite a bit of gaming or watching TV or
nice,
something.
nice.
You know, it's a bit of me time.
Yeah.
So you know, typically my wife and I will go to bed at about 10 o'clock or so. We'll watch a bit of TV and play with the dog for a bit, and then I'll get up and go and watch some of my own TV. She'll watch some soaps for an hour. She goes to sleep an hour or 2 hours before I do. She needs more sleep than I do.
Sure.
So I probably get up before she does, and I think she needs about 26 hours a day sleep. It never seems to be enough.
What do you feel like if you get it wrong, quote unquote?
Yeah. Well, if I get it wrong, firstly, if I sleep too long, there's that temptation sometimes of, I'll just have another half hour, and then it turns into an hour.
Oh yeah.
The next night I might struggle to get to sleep, where I'm going to feel dopey all day.
Yeah.
So when I wake up and I feel like that's enough sleep, then I get up.
It's weird that sleeping in for me, past when I'm usually up. If I go to the gym or I've got something energetic to do, I don't feel revitalized from it, which is odd. Do you know what I mean?
But it's all down to whether you're getting enough sleep in the first place, you see. So sometimes that lying can be really beneficial.
Yeah.
If you've got a sleep deficit, because sleep deficit builds up over a week. If every night you're getting 15 to half an hour less sleep than maybe you need, then you can build that up a bit the weekend. But the majority of people nowadays are probably getting less sleep than they need because they're getting up for work or kids early, and then they want to watch box sets late at night, and they're not getting enough sleep. So that's where napping can come in as well. Fighting it all the time could be disastrous. Just a 2-minute nap can be really refreshing.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
20 minutes is perfect if you can find the space to do that. If you go much more than 20 minutes, you're slipping into a different sleep cycle.
Do you know what they're called?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's different phases of sleep. Well, the most important type of sleep seems to be REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, which is where we do most of our dreaming.
Right.
And that seems to be where the brain is really refreshed.
Okay.
But there are other phases of sleep which are deeper, we're at a lower level of consciousness, and they might be about physical repair going on. So it seems that sleep performs more than one function for us.
Yeah, I've got little knowledge on this, but maybe you have more. Do you know what the circadian rhythm is?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, it's the circadian rhythm.
Circadian.
It comes from the Latin circa diem, which is around a day, approximately a day. So it's our daily rhythm.
Right.
So, I mean, experiments have been done with people. There was a guy who went to live in a cave in France for a month or so with no clocks or anything, and to see what his rhythm was. And it seems that our average rhythm is a bit more than 24 hours. So without the sun resetting it, there's something called Zeitgebers, a lovely German word. It basically means time givers in German. So every day when we see the sunlight, it resets our internal body clock. If we don't have those Zeitgebers hitting us, then our body clock often runs about 25, 26 hours. That's why it's often easier from a jet lag point of view to travel west and put the clock going the other way than coming back east again. So because having shorter days to adapt to that is a lot harder than having longer days. So similarly, when the clocks go spring forward, fall back, the spring forward clock where we're losing an hour's sleep, typically there's a surge in car accidents the next day, and A&E sees more business. Wow. Just from a 1 hour difference, it has an effect.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and I noticed myself, again, if you're being aware of these things, I noticed that an hour shift for me takes about a week to work its way out fully.
And I'm going to imagine a person listening to this on sleep is possibly somebody that really struggles with sleep and potentially like insomnia. Have you worked with many clients that have had that?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a thing where people get frightened to go to bed.
Really?
Okay, there's different levels of insomnia. So there's some where it's maybe nightmares or something, or that the fear of not going to sleep gets in the way. So the solution there can be to deprive yourself of sleep. So try to go to bed at 3 or 4 in the morning, where you're bound to go to sleep because you're so tired, and then that could cure the fear. For ordinary insomnia, if you like, maybe somebody's had too much sleep leading up to it. Maybe they've got some major worries going on. Quite often, the people can have this thing: they go to sleep at bedtime and then wake up a couple of hours later and then can't get back to sleep again. So again, you need to be instituting regimes to deal with that. The first thing is lying there thinking, "Oh shit, tomorrow's going to be terrible. I can't sleep," is not going to help you sleep. So don't look at the clock if it's an issue for you, and get up, go in another room for 20 minutes, half an hour, do something a bit boring, and then come back again.
Is insomnia all psychological?
Who knows? Again, because we don't really know what sleep. If we don't really know what sleep is, but generally speaking, if I've got some anxiety issues, that's what's going to interfere with my sleep more than something else. Alcohol doesn't help with sleep. Sleep is less effective. Anything that lowers our level of consciousness reduces the effectiveness of sleep, because probably it suppresses dreaming, which is an essential part of it.
A lot of people go on medication for sleep, don't they?
And again, it doesn't really help, because the sleeping tablets they're lowering our level of consciousness, so sleep loses some of its effect.
Right. Okay.
So often I work with clients and it's amazing how the number of times where the problems that clients have had with sleep, when I tell them to go to bed later, it cures them. So often what people
quite a success rate.
Yeah, because people are having trouble with sleep and they start chasing it, going to bed earlier.
Yeah, I get you.
And they're spending too long in bed and it ruins it. So I suggest to them, I'll say, well, try go to bed an hour later, see what happens. They come back next week and say, I've had a fantastic week's sleep.
Yeah.
It's the wrong time. Too little or too much, they're almost as problematic.
It's like having a thought in your head, and then you go, I'm going to get rid of this thought, get rid of this thought, get rid of this thought.
Yeah.
Sort of just letting it pass, letting it go. So, it's quite ironic, isn't it? Just go to bed a lot later and you'll be better.
Yeah. So if you get the opportunity, sometimes if people don't know what their chronotype is or how much sleep they need, well, if there's that time when there's no work for a week, try and wake up naturally and time how long it takes. And that can give you some sort of indication. And if you're feeling fresh that day, then that's probably about the right amount of sleep.
I mean, we speak of sort of evolutionary a lot of the time, and I'm surprised that there's different types in terms of, surely back in the day when it would just be sunrise, sunset, wouldn't it? Why are people different? Why are there different types of sleep pattern?
Well, they're minor differences, aren't they, compared to the whole? So maybe you've got a difference of sort of like 6 to 9 hours.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
So it's relatively minor differences. The different chronotypes. Who knows? It might be better to have different parts of the tribe alert at different times of the day.
Yeah.
But it's working nights is really difficult. Working shifts where they're switching around shifts is even more difficult, because you're almost constantly jet lagged. And if the shifts are moving forward, it's hugely different to shifts moving backwards. There was an experiment done many years ago with the Chicago police force that had a shift pattern that shifted to the earlier shift every time it changed. They've changed that to going to the later shift, and it changed life expectancy for 5 to 10 years.
Wow.
That's how significant this stuff is. It's going to affect how long you live, getting good sleep. It may also have an effect on whether you're likely or not to develop dementia.
Wow, okay.
Maggie Thatcher always boasted that she only had 4 hours sleep at night. She got dementia. I'm not saying it's related. But again, I think because it's something that the brain is doing to sort itself out, maybe getting enough of the right quality sleep is really important.
Can you overuse sleep though.
Yeah, so I was saying that sleeping too long,
Yeah.
that could be related to depression.
Right.
Again, quite often that when we're depressed, it's that just pull the covers over your head and let the world go away. Because depression isn't necessarily about feeling sad, it's more about a loss of motivation. So getting a bit of structure in your life, getting up and getting on with things, even if you don't want to, is going to be better for you.
Yeah.
And you're going to feel better for it.
I've always loved that phrase, sleep on it, though. Let's sleep on it.
Yeah.
Because the amount of, I think we may have mentioned this in a podcast before, maybe me and you've just had a chat about it, but where I'm so confused by a situation, and then suddenly you wake up the next day and you're like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
And the brain must be just doing so many organisation and work going on while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
So what a magnificent tool to use.
Yeah, it is, and often gives us an emotional reset as well. If something that we're really troubled about, something
Yeah,
the
that's
next
so
day you
true.
feel
Yeah.
better.
Till you wake up and then you're like, what was that thing I was upset for? Oh no, and you tease yourself with it again.
Yeah, quite often when people are in the early phases of a major bereavement, there could be a moment when they wake, when they've forgotten, and then there's that realisation again, the loss hits anew.
I've been there.
Yeah.
No, yeah. It's quite a pain. I just went there then. Literally.
Yeah.
Oh dear, man. It's slightly off topic. It's not quite, but are you fascinated by dreaming?
Well, yeah, I'm not one that's into dream interpretation.
Sure. Yeah.
Except in the broadest sense, I think our anxiety shows up in our dreams.
There's really sort of common dreams, aren't there, that people all go through, like maybe losing your teeth and stuff. I had a lot of them.
I've never lost my teeth in a dream.
In a dream? Have you not?
No.
I've got so many friends I could talk to over that, and I don't try and interpret
Are they
all
all
my
boxers?
dreams. What's that?
Are they all boxers?
Boxes? What do you mean? Box? Oh, I see. I think all my boxing mates. No, all different. There's just, if you type in common dreams,
Yeah, I
they'll
mean,
be being chased by something.
Yeah, being naked.
Yes.
Or inappropriately addressed in a situation.
Yeah.
Not being able to find your way through something is a common thing.
That is fascinating, isn't it? That we all, but somebody in the Amazon somewhere probably shares a very similar, so different reference points.
Yeah.
But we share a commonality through our dreams.
Yeah. I mean, Sigmund Freud described dreaming as the royal road to the unconscious.
The royal road to the unconscious.
But I think he just made it all up.
I think he made a lot of stuff up,
Yeah,
didn't he?
the interpretation of dreams. I used to kind of admire Carl Jung when I'd heard about him. He was Freud's pupil, if you like, until I actually read some Carl Jung stuff, and I realised he was a horrible, racist, homophobic misogynist.
Back in the day.
and he just made stuff up.
Yeah.
And you said, these dreams mean this and that. He was just guessing.
I hate
Absolutely
it.
rubbish. I think that dreams are randomly, largely random, but they are affected maybe by the mood of what's going on at the time. Let's say some ideas are that they're little stimuli popping off in the brainstem that stimulate us to make stories up. But we're always a little bit conscious when we're asleep. It's interesting, I can sleep through a thunderstorm, sleep through anything. But if my wife just goes, David, I'm instantly awake. Or if there's been an odd noise in the night, it's interesting, I'm awake and I can remember the noise that woke me.
I've had in dreams ideas for music. I've had a little notepad near my bed after the one time I woke up and I didn't know where to write it down. And I went, I'll remember it in the morning. I didn't. I was like, no, I remember that was a great thought. So I've always had a notepad next to me now, just in case. And yeah, they sometimes pop up in there, or good ideas. So yeah, there's something within it all, but I don't try and overinterpret ideas and push myself down signs that probably aren't there. I think that's not the wisest way of living.
But I think, from a creative point of view, we did a previous podcast about creativity. I think there are some things that our brain is working on that we're not consciously doing.
Yeah.
And I think when we're thinking about it, it's almost like we're constantly reprogramming it, and it's not allowing the program to run. And overnight, maybe the program runs and it comes up with an answer for us.
Another thing I've got very little knowledge of. That's a lot of things. Bloody hell, Mikey.
Why don't you just say, I have very little knowledge, which is not true.
Much knowledge. I've got knowledge in what I like. But lucid dreaming. Do you know or hear? Have you had conversations?
Well, it's demonstrably a thing.
Sure.
Is that people apparently can train themselves to realise or have a trigger that tells them that they're dreaming.
And start having a right hoot in the dream.
Yeah, and then go off wherever they want to with it. So it sounds quite fantastic, really. But
yeah, it's got probably no help or significance for mental health then, maybe. And
well, again, it might be counterproductive because we don't know what dreaming does.
Sure.
It's a very interesting thing that during REM sleep, called that because people see the eyeballs moving about under the eyelids. So we're almost following the action.
Wow.
But we're in physically we're at our deepest level of sleep. And it takes a while to get into that deep REM sleep. It probably takes a couple of hours to get into that state. So we go through various phases of sleep, but we're at our most asleep in that REM sleep. But if we're deprived of it, so if you do experiments with people where they're woken every time they go into REM sleep, over a period of time they go into it faster and faster, and eventually, as soon as they close their eyes, they're going into dreaming sleep. So sometimes if we're having nightmares that are waking us up, that can promote going into REM sleep more quickly.
Because I mean, have you ever been sleep deprived before? Have you had to stay up for even? I think I did 2 days, and
yeah, pulling all-nighters at work and things like that in the
or
past.
with mates where they wouldn't let you sleep, you start drifting off and they're punching you up. So we've got to go and do stuff. But,
I've never had mates like that.
Oh yeah, I've got cretins in my life.
Yeah, too many, I think.
Yeah, this is what you get from all that. But it started to feel very weird, very wacky. I've had some times before, but sleep deprivation is probably the weirdest I've ever felt. So it does showcase how integral sleep is.
Yeah, and I think many road accidents are caused by sleep deprivation. People falling asleep at the wheel. There are things called micro sleep that people have.
My mum had that. It's lucky she was on the drive, but she went through it and ended up in the head. She woke up going, "All right, here I am."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, people might be there, with their eyes open, but to all intents and purposes, they're asleep.
It is a shame to some degree. We live in such a fast-paced society, and work want you there as long as they can. School wants you there as long as you can. Work on your homework. Do this. If there was just a bit of it, because I've lived in lots of other countries, and South Africa, for example, or Australia. I remember I used to at Australia particularly with one boss. I had to go and wake him up all the time and say, "Are we working or not? Like, do you want us to do stuff? You're supposed to be telling us what to do." And he'd go look at me and go, "Just fuck off, mate." Tell me to just chill out. And I didn't know how to chill out because I had that British English way of we should be doing stuff.
But again, it's a relatively new thing. It's a product of the industrial era. So if you look at most hunter-gatherer groups, they have biphasic or multiphasic sleep. Biphasic means you're sleeping in 2 tranches, or multiphasic, just napping on an irregular basis. It's not about getting your 6 to 8 hours in one session.
Yeah.
It's about cumulatively over the 24-hour period. So for the medieval period, there used to be a first and second sleep. Typically, people would go to sleep for a few hours and they'd get up, maybe have something to eat, maybe they'd pray or do something like that, and then go back for a second sleep. Perhaps in wintertime, when lighting would be expensive, it's a way of dividing the night up. So it's only really when we started coming to the industrial era and people working fixed shift patterns that sleep had to happen in a certain period. But again, it's that napping and sleeping. There was an island in the Mediterranean where they changed from a siesta pattern to a more sort of northern European pattern, and again, it had an impact on life expectancy.
Right? Yeah, I remember the most relaxed and healthy I felt was probably in South Africa, and that was we'd be up pretty early, but that was 2 hours shift.
Yeah.
Then you'd have a couple of hours off. Then you'd do another hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then you'd have a couple of hours and then finish off an hour.
Yeah.
So you had loads of little breaks where you could have the opportunity to sleep, and I probably would at every opportunity get my sleep in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
little mini refuels.
What's been happening with the temperature in southern Europe, if with global warming that comes more to this country, we may have to adopt some of these different patterns. So often in Spain they'll work from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then maybe have something to eat and then a siesta at 3 p.m. and have their main meal in the day at 9 p.m. when things have cooled down. These are different patterns depending on the environment that you're in.
Yeah.
But guess what? Did somebody's phone just go off then? Because nobody would be unprofessional as to not have the phone
Not
switched
me,
off.
mate.
It?
Yeah. I don't even know
Must
where
be
it
Owen's.
is.
Must be Owen's
Yeah.
phone.
Blame everything on Owen.
Yeah.
No matter what we do.
Yeah. But again, it's one of those things about there's no set way of doing it.
No.
But it's be aware that it's something you really ought to be managing. Because you pay attention to other things in your life. Oh, I need to get my exercise or eat the right stuff. And people pay no attention at all to sleep typically.
Yeah.
And it have a big effect on their mood and their sense of well-being and health.
Yeah, I'm with you. Do you feel for some people who play games that you play games at the end of it? I'm just surprised because you listen to most people that talk about sleep and they have kind of strict structure and routine.
Yeah.
Are you saying you don't really have to go by it by that way? Because they would say no electronics after this certain time. You do maybe a meditation here and that's your answer. But you're saying more know yourself and maybe getting up and playing a few games is good for you. It gives you that...
I think games, just before sleep might not be the best plan. So
Okay.
the idea that screens are bad, I think, has been debunked with some more recent research.
These are some of the ideas I thought we may have been talking about.
Yeah, no, the suggestion was that screens were one of those sight gabers, that the bright light was, but it's not really bright compared to sunlight. Daylight is way brighter than a screen. So, but it's what is of concern is whether it's really exciting content, whether that's doing it.
Yeah.
So if I do some gaming at night, then I'll typically stop gaming an hour before I go to sleep.
Sure.
Weirdly,
History Channel on after that then, or something?
Huh?
Then would you put like the History Channel
I'll often read the next day's paper. I'll read the paper before bedtime.
Nice.
And a bit oddly, I'll do a cryptic crossword just before I go to bed.
Yeah, just give your mind something to play with.
Yeah, and it just seems to settle me down. It's enough to concentrate on, but it's not stressful.
Maybe for me, the thing that has been working more so is something with familiarity. I'll put Harry Potter on. Listen, I don't know how many times I've watched that now, but because I don't have to pay any attention, I just know it. So then I can concentrate more. Don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, focus on sleeping a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think worrying about sleep is one of the biggest things that block sleep.
Yeah.
It's lying there thinking, I'm going to be rubbish tomorrow.
That was me as a child.
Yeah.
That was probably primary school and just going into secondary. There must have been so many anxieties and things going on in my mind anyway. That phone, man. But yeah, I remember staying at my grandma's all the time and being up at 1, 2, 3, just... I think I started punching myself at one. I was like, I just want to sleep. I was getting really irritated.
And that's where sleep starts to become the enemy.
Yes.
And that's where you help do the thing of go to bed a lot later, so you're bound to go to sleep. And then if you do that for a few days, it cures people. People who've had years of poor sleep can be cured within a week. It's just about taking active measures to control that.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, it's managing it. It's paying attention to it. And I can't encourage people enough to do that. The main thing is knowing how much you need and managing around that, because that's when you go to sleep easily. I typically go to sleep within 5 or 10 minutes of going to bed. This morning, I woke up a little bit later because the dog didn't start crying early, so I went to bed last night at 2:00 and I woke up at 8:45. Feeling refreshed, sharp, and ready for the day.
What's the science behind counting sheep?
It's doing something boring, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just doing something boring and again distracting. But again, manage it.
Yeah. Find
your pattern and try and stick with it wherever possible. If your pattern's broken and you need some more, get some more where you can. It's just that 2 minutes sometimes can just refresh, particularly if you're at the wheel. If you're feeling tired, go and pull over.
Oh.
A late friend of mine, he didn't become late as this. He had a car accident where he basically woke up upside down in a field, having flipped it off the A38.
I'll tell you what though, the services are buggers, because I remember one time coming back from Leeds, so not that far, but I'd been dead late. I was doing a poetry event, and then I'm driving and I thought, oh, I'm so tired. My phone had died, didn't have my wallet on me, so I was like, I've got to pull in. So I pulled into this station. I was like, oh no, I can't set an alarm to wake me up. It says I've got an hour and a half, and then so I ended up getting fined £100 because I pull in.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I was doing the right thing. I had to sleep, or I was going to injure myself or someone else.
Yeah.
But then I had no means of being able to pay, so bloody £100 that sleep cost me.
Yeah.
Gits.
There's one other aspect to sleep I'd like to mention. It's something that I suffered with for a while. I no longer do because I've got the cure for it, which is sleep apnea, which is a very serious condition. That's where, particularly as we get older, and if we're carrying a bit of weight, is that as our muscles relax, the airway closes.
Right.
And breathing stops. To the point of where we're going to die, and then our automatic system wakes us up. So people can be waking up hundreds of times during the night and never getting effective sleep. And it can lead to something called Pickwickian syndrome, because there's a character in Dickens' Pickwick Papers was a fat boy who was always just falling asleep. He'd fall off stagecoaches or anything like that.
Right.
And that used to be me. I fell asleep at the wheel more than once.
Wow.
Always got away with it, but it's kind of a miracle. Now I wear a mask at night, which was a horrible thing to start with, but it's the first thing I pack if we go away now, because I'm not safe without it, and I get brilliant sleep as a result of it. There are other solutions as well as masks, but if people feel that they're struggling with alertness during the day, if they can't watch a TV program and they'll feel that maybe their partner's saying that they're waking up or snoring a lot in the night, maybe it's something to get investigated. It's wearing a mask is a scary thing at first because it feels quite constricting. So the way I dealt with that was not going to bed until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning for the first week I was wearing it. I had to go to sleep, and after that it's just natural now. You know, I kind of love it. Yeah, it's looking like a Japanese fighter pilot. It's not a romantic look.
Yeah.
But good sleep and good health
I think
is.
it'd suit you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm picturing it now. That's why I'm love gazing over at you. Just, I think, yeah, David, you rock that.
But the effect that sleep apnea has on the heart, the multiple stopping of breathing, is the oxygen deprivation, it has real effects on the health. So we've talked a little bit lightly about it, but that sleep apnea is a big issue, and I think a lot of road deaths are caused by sleep apnea, undiagnosed sleep apnea. So it's an important thing.
I think I used to do something counterproductive as well. Before I went to sleep, was do something strenuous and an activity, but it didn't help, and I think that's because it put my body on alert. It was like, oh, Mikey, it's time to go.
Yeah.
So what I thought would be exhausting me and tiring me out for sleep and get to a readiness, it actually turned on all the neurons and got me ready for action.
Because sleep isn't about curing physical tiredness; it's about mental tiredness.
Yeah.
Sitting on a sofa and watching a TV program will cure you from the tiredness from your exercise.
Yeah.
It's the sleep is about getting your brain in the right place. So I think we've hopefully covered it in some sort of usefulness for you there. Sleep is something that you can manage, so manage better. Thanks. Bye-bye.